morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, October 21st, 2016. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Brandon Castel. Brandon, first topic, JT Barrett was getting a lot of flack from Ohio State fans and even just fans across the nation saying he's not a very good passer and Ohio State's passing offense is bad and all of this. And, I've even said I think the passing offense needs to be more innovative, But you look at the stats, JT Barrett is number one in the Big Ten in passing efficiency, 10th nationally in passing efficiency. So maybe he's doing a better job than people think. And I know last week balls were going right through the hands of some of his receivers. Is JT getting too much flack, in your opinion, from fans, or does he deserve the flack that he's getting?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know what? I actually think it's I would say a little bit of both, and really that tells you how good JT Barrett is, or at least how good he's been throughout his career. I mean, go back to 2014, the incredible run he had, threw for 2,800 yards, 34 touchdowns and 10 picks. I mean, the guy had an unbelievable breakthrough onto the national stage. And so that really set the bar incredibly high for JT Barrett. And obviously the injury and then last season kind of swapping back and forth with Cardale Jones until he really found it, in the last couple of games of the season. But I think that did set the bar incredibly high for Barrett. So expectations, for what he's capable of, what his numbers should look like, are incredibly high. And so when you look at a game like he had against Indiana and he's 9 for 21, under 100 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, I think, you can look at the running numbers. Obviously, he was able to take over that game on the ground. But I think from a passing standpoint, that type of game, I think there is a little bit of concern. There is a little bit of, reason for people to be worried. Now, obviously, the circumstances were unique. And, he came back pretty strong in the second half of that Wisconsin game. And I thought really, had one of his better passing games of the year, the way he was throwing the ball around in the second half of that game. So, I think that it's fair to be a little bit critical. I mean, in the sense of, you want perfection, the way this team is playing, the way that, this program is built, you almost want perfection from the position. But, I think JT Barrett needs to play better. I think he knows that. He's been a little bit off, but I think it's a little bit overblown. I mean, the guy's still having a tremendous season statistically, still completing 63% of his passes. He's still got a quarterback rating over 150. So, the guy is going to be your leader. He's going to be the guy who can lead this offense and put up big numbers. But I do think that he's had a little bit of a hard adjustment to a lot of these different receivers taking on bigger roles and, maybe replacing guys like Michael Thomas and Jalen Marshall. I think he has not looked as comfortable at times with this new group.
Yeah, very well said. I think too much has been made of it. I think he had one really bad game passing, and that was Indiana. He missed 3 wide-open receivers that would have been touchdowns on deep balls. If he would have hit on 1 or 2 of those, I don't think anybody would be saying anything, but it just looked bad against Indiana that 3 wide-open guys deep, and he missed on all of them. Underthrew Curtis Samuel on 1 of them, and overthrew the other 2. But I think, as you said, I think it's a little bit of both, but I think it's a little bit overblown. Our next topic, Urban Meyer said on Wednesday that Dante Booker will make his return from the knee injury. He says he will play against Penn State. Didn't say he's going to start. We'll see. We have sources saying that Dante's still, limping around pretty good, but it's good news that he's been medically cleared. My question for you, even when Dante Booker becomes 100% healthy, which it doesn't sound like he is right now, do you think there's a chance that he's going to beat Jerome Baker out for the starting job? Do you think there's a chance he'll get his starting job back?
Yeah, I mean, that's been an interesting thought in the back of my mind for a while, because I realize that these knee injuries usually take a lot longer than you think. Now, I'm not a world-class athlete, but I know, the one time that I had an MCL sprain, I know that, the moment you start to feel good, you're still not there. You're still not the same guy that you were. It does take a little longer than you think to get back from even these kind of minor knee injuries. And if you don't need them, I'm sure if they needed to rush him back and then, it was one of those situations where they just didn't have a guy and you had to have Dante Booker in order to compete, then I would imagine they'd get him back out there and he'd feel like he could push it a little bit, but I don't think they need to do that. And, I think it'll be interesting to see, but I just don't know how you take Jerome Baker off the field. I mean, there's a lot of times that I felt like he's been the best player out there, at least in that, front 7 group. for the Buckeyes. And I just think, both him and Chris Worley have played so well this season that there will be a role for Dante Booker. He's too good of a player. He's a guy that obviously they felt was one of the key guys who was moving into a starting role, going back to the spring. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, Dante Booker's got to go out and really compete for a starting job. It was almost like, all right, well, Dante Booker, he's the next man up. He's going to take over, for Josh Perry and be a tackling machine this year. So there will be a role for him, and I think they'll work him back in slowly and get him some reps. I mean, you never know at what point in the season you might need him. One injury to any of those three linebackers, I think then you find a way to get Booker on the field full time. But I don't think you'll see him come out, take his starting job back, and just put Jerome Baker on the bench and never to be heard from again. I think Jerome Baker has proven he's a really good football player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you have to leave Jerome Baker on the field. He's turned into a star right before our eyes, and I think having Dante Booker back is a nice luxury, but Jerome Baker's not giving that job up, in my opinion. Another question that keeps coming up is how many assistant coaches will Ohio State lose this offseason? Obviously, Greg Schiano is going to be a hot name. There's a chance he'll be one and done. I think for Ohio State's sake, I hope he's back for, a second year. I don't think he's going to leave for a program like Purdue, for example, that has an opening, but Brandon, I could see someone like Ed Warner leave for Purdue. I could see Tim Beck. I don't think Purdue's going to want Tim Beck, but I could see Tim Beck leaving for Purdue. I could see maybe Luke Fickell getting an interview there. Just how many, including Schiano, how many assistant coaches do you think Ohio State will lose this offseason, and who will they be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on how the rest of the season plays out, and that's not to say that there aren't guys who would, who would be at the top of some teams' lists and who might be interested in a head coaching job right now, and regardless of how it plays out. But if for instance this season were to roll along, Ohio State were to beat Michigan State, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, go into the college football playoff, and go undefeated and win the national championship, I think you could see a pretty mass exodus. I mean, just in terms of there's going to be enough jobs out there for guys like Schiano, like Ed Warner, like Tim Beck, maybe Luke Fickell even as well, who, that there's going to be this buzz around the program, and it's going to be like, all right, we won our second national championship. If these jobs are going to come available, I think that would put Schiano at the top of a lot of lists, just seeing, if the Ohio State defense is playing at that level. I do think you could see that. Otherwise, I think it'll be, you'll see a couple go. I agree with you. I don't think Schiano would be interested in the Purdue job. I wrote about that a little bit, saying I just can't imagine, this is not back in the day when he went to Rutgers. This is a new situation where he's got some clout, and yeah, he's got to remake his image a little bit, but that's what he's here to do. And I don't think you do that by going to Purdue. So, Ed Warner, we both know he wants to be a head coach at some point. Yeah, I don't think anybody does that by going to Purdue. But, I think it'll have to be the right job now for Ed, because he's in a good spot. He's not just the offensive line coach. He's the offensive coordinator working under Urban Meyer. Got a good situation, but, I think he wants to be a head coach at some point. Tim Beck will get some interest from some other schools, and may have a good fit. And I don't know that they would really, make a big stink about him leaving. Not that they're trying to push him out the door or anything like that. But Fickell's the interesting one to me, because I think we know that he wants to be a head coach. He's talked about it. He's even interviewed for some jobs, but yet I could see him at Ohio State in 10 years. I don't know for sure what Fickell wants to do. He has never struck me as a guy who really wanted to do all the head coachy type things. He wants to be in the locker room, coach football, watch film, eat, sleep, and breathe, tackling and hitting. And I can't imagine him enjoying the dinners and the fundraisers and all that stuff. Maybe for the right program. But, I do think you'll see a couple of these guys leave. Even Kerry Combs, I think, is a guy who's going to continue to get some, there's going to be schools that love his energy. I think he's in the right spot and the right fit right now. But, I definitely think you'll see some more of these guys get some interviews.
And Fickell changed agents during the offseason. That was a huge sign to me that maybe now he's thinking, okay, it's now or never. Do you want to be a head coach or not? He changed agents. So that tells me that he probably is looking to be a head coach. If I didn't have that information, I would agree that, I think Fickell might be a lifer at Ohio State. But I think he's at least going to look to be a head coach after this season. Maybe he'll get an interview at Purdue or elsewhere. We'll see what happens. But I think Purdue will shoot higher than that, though. I don't think they're going to go for Ohio State's co-defensive coordinator. I know he has the title of defensive coordinator, but we all know Greg Schiano's really calling the shots there. I hope whatever happens with Luke Fickell, I hope it works out like he wants. He's a good guy and does it the right way, and I wish him the best. All right, last topic here. Brass tacks. Ohio State at Penn State tomorrow night, whiteout conditions. Buckeyes are favored by 19.5 points. Give me your final score prediction, how it's going to play out, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting game because, Ohio State's coming off that incredibly emotional, incredibly competitive overtime win at Wisconsin. And you could really tell those guys put it all on the field, and they gave it everything they had to win that game. It wasn't perfect. They didn't necessarily play their best football for 4 quarters or for, 4+ quarters. But, they gave it all they had when they needed to. And so it'll be interesting to see if Ohio State can, coming off of that, can come back and get themselves in the right frame of mind to go out and play a team that really maybe doesn't elicit the same kind of fear or respect that they did maybe 10 years ago, but can still beat you up a little bit if you go into their house at night in a whiteout and you kind of think you're going to sleepwalk through it like they're Rutgers. Then that's the only way I see this being a competitive game. If Ohio State comes out a little bit sleepy, a little bit hungover, they have a hard time matching the energy they had last week, then I think you could see Penn State get some early momentum. I just don't, again, kind of my same thoughts as a lot of times. I just don't see Penn State's offense being able to move the ball against this defense. This defense just is really good. I know Wisconsin's a very unique team, so I just don't see Penn State being able to move the ball. So I do think Ohio State will win by a couple touchdowns. If they show up and play, I don't know that they'll cover entirely. It kind of depends. Do they come out and get Curtis Samuel going? Is JT Barrett going to have, the same rhythm he had in the second half of the Wisconsin game? There's still some unknowns. I think Penn State somewhere around probably 17 to 20 points and Ohio State somewhere in the mid-30s. So, I do like them to go in and win this game. Doesn't really scare me unless they completely forget to show up. Then you never know. But
I think it's going to be very similar to Urban Meyer's first game out there in 2012. I think it won't be a blowout, but the Buckeyes will win comfortably. They won that game 35-23. Penn State scored a late touchdown to kind of make it look respectable. So I have the Buckeyes winning this one 35-17. So I have actually Penn State barely covering. But, and I could envision the Buckeyes blowing them out, but I think it's going to be somewhat close, and the Buckeyes will just win comfortably, but not in a blowout. So, again, I have 35-17. Great stuff, as always, out of Brandon Castel. Really appreciate it, Brandon. Thank you very much. And thanks to the listeners for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great day and a great weekend. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.